during these first few early weeks. I can't even talk today because I'm so angry. Welcome back to On Deadline, the Washington Examiner's political game show. I'm Christian Daytalk.
And I'm Tiana Desher.
Each episode, we bring you the week's biggest political headlines, give our takes, and then you get to vote on a winner at the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. Like we do every week, we're starting above the fold. It's a minute where we get to deliver the number one story in news straight to your feed. Tiana, what are you looking at this week?
Mike Johnson somehow managed to wrangle his 4-seat House majority into having Republicans actually pass a budget bill to serve as the framework for the One Big Beautiful Bill. That would be President Trump's extension of the tax cuts, plus some other provisions for energy and border security. But the Senate wants to stall. They want to pass a border security bill first. But Donald Trump is evidence that you didn't need a bill, you just needed a new president who wasn't Joe Biden. We've had border crossings fall below 9,000 last month. Compare that to the 301,000 monthly border crossings under the peak of the Biden administration. And how have we received the lowest border crossing number in documented history? Because of Trump. Because all he's doing is executing the law as written. ICE deportations and arrests up 600%. You had his tariff regime force Mexico to arrest nearly 900 members of the Sinaloa cartel. Fentanyl seizures are down 50%, and even crossings from Canada are 1/3 of what they were before Biden took office. The Senate has time, Christian. I don't know why they keep on trying to do this 2-track bill nonsense when you have time to wait for the One Big Beautiful Bill. Focus on the tax cuts.
I've heard you talk about the tax cuts a lot, Tiana, and I know it's like your pet project here. And I think the example that you brought up regarding border crossings and the immigration changes we've seen under Donald Trump is important. It's basically the most effective policy shift we've seen with this new administration. That being said, immigration, the system itself, hasn't been fixed. Border crossings are down. We've seen deportations skyrocket. So moving along, if we're using immigration as an example for what the Senate should do, the problem that I think about is Donald Trump isn't leading the Senate. He has Mike Johnson in his pocket so he can do what he wants in the House. So what can the White House effectively offer these Senate Republican holdouts in order to move this vehicle along while Donald Trump still has, all of the political goodwill, all of the political capital to get it done during his first 100 days?
Well, yeah, this is the thing. He needs to start using the bully pulpit.
Okay.
He can't let this go to waste, this moment. Unlike a incoming president that has a projected 2 terms to get something done, Trump has a deadline of 4 years, but more specifically, as I know we're going to get into later, a timeline of until the end of 2025 to get the TCJA extension done. And look, I think border security, you don't want to have presidents just continually reversing and flipping back and going 180 again on policy. We do want to codify some of this. If we can codify remain in Mexico, we should. If we can codify our safe third country agreements, we should. If Trump wants to codify, turning CBP 1 into the self-deportation app. As
CBP Home, they launched it on Monday,
That we should pass all this because it shouldn't all just be done via executive fiat. But really, as far as the crisis goes, right, the border crisis is over. And immigration is almost a separate issue that can only come after that border issue has been fixed, which largely it has.
Okay, all right.
Christian, what's the top story you're following this week?
Well, we saw what happened after Donald Trump's tariffs were implemented last week regarding Canada and Mexico. 1, the stock market nearly cratered. 2, Donald Trump already amended those tariffs to provide broad carve-outs for roughly half of all goods. Those are the goods covered by USMCA, the trade deal Trump, brought about back in 2019. That being said, his tariff agenda is having a major boost to governments in power, just not the one here in the United States. Down in Mexico, President Claudia Sheinbaum has seen her approval rating jump to 85% positive. That is outrageous. North of the border, Canadian Liberals, they've erased a 30-point polling deficit heading into federal elections later this year. And of course, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre is basically a mini Trump himself, even though he does look a lot more like Canadian Mike Johnson. I'm curious to see, will Donald Trump keep these policies in place especially the tariffs, which we know are supposed to be fighting a fentanyl war and not necessarily a trade war, if it's going to help his political enemies stay in power, again, in two of our most important trading partners in any part of the globe. It's a fascinating development and one that I definitely don't think the White House saw coming.
We have and will continue to explain the reason why tariffs, in effect, are not smart economic policy. As far as the diplomatic threat goes, there's a Goldilocks, just right amount of threat you want to hit, right? To the extent that the tariff threat has given Claudia Sheinbaum cover to go after the cartels, that is a good thing because her left-wing party has historically been very beholden to the cartel power, right?
And not just President Sheinbaum, really,
Right,
Mexican presidents forever. Yeah.
Going back, it's been a recurring problem, right? And so she's not particularly favorable to the cartels. It's that she historically has not had the political cover to go after them. The threat has given her a lot. It's why she's passing over 29 wanted known cartel operatives to U.S. custody now. But if you go too far, not only have you consolidated nationalist identity in both of these countries, but also it hurts American businesses and American investors who they don't know what to do, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Trump has talked about the idea of the reciprocal tariffs, which isn't a bad idea because the through line behind these reciprocal tariffs would be the goal of bringing everything down to zero. But Canada and Mexico already incurred 0% effective tariff on U.S. imports because of USMCA, which Donald Trump was a key author of, right? So if you want to negotiate for retaliatory tariffs, we already did so. We're the ones now starting the war, right? We're punching first, which again, if you want to have a clear and consistent metric of saying, each month you must hit this % reduction in fentanyl seizures and this % reduction in crossings. And if you hit that metric, no tariffs until the next month. And if you don't, you get 1 month of this amount of tariffs. That would at least provide a little bit of stability, not just to the foreign governments, but also to domestic investors and manufacturers. Because another thing, it's easy to forget, 40% of all Canadian exports are made in America. 25% of all Mexican exports are made in America. So we are no longer living in an economy where everything is entirely American or entirely Canadian. The case when that is very rare.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're talking about. I am very proud of the fact that we on this show, you in particular, talked about how tariffs need to be a negotiating strategy, just one arrow in the quiver for Donald Trump and not like the end-all, be-all of his economic platform. And I don't think the Trump White House shares that thought. I mean, it seems to me now they are basically the clown meme, right? People are saying,
I am the clown meme.
We'll see. I mean, we'll see how the reciprocal agenda goes out. But it started like this. Donald Trump loves tariffs. Back in the first administration, I'm going to push back on China. I'm going to reshore manufacturing, and I'm going to specifically boost metal production, steel and aluminum here in the United States. Now he's slapping tariffs on our closest allies, quite literally geographically, the European Union. This thing is ballooning out of control, and it just feels like this White House didn't think this thing through. I'd say I'm shocked, but to be honest, I'm not surprised.
Time for yays and nays when we give our opinion on the news of the week. Sometimes we'll agree, other times we disagree.
A government shutdown would backfire the most on Republicans.
I agree with this, and I think the main reason doesn't actually have to do with anything politically in terms of voter perception heading into the midterms or into the general in 2028. This is all about time, right? Donald Trump, we've talked about it, has all of the political goodwill, a landslide election victory in November, to get as much as he can possibly get done in the first 100 days. If the government shuts down, that means everything that DOGE is doing is also going to be shut down. They just got this big legal win last week that allowed those engineers back into Treasury to track all of these payments and try and unravel the mysteries behind these payment systems, which Elon Musk and DOGE are saying, that's why we got some faulty information and put it on our wall of receipts, not because we're doing bad work. This is a huge, huge speed bump in what Donald Trump is trying to do. And again, like you talked about in your monologue, it's not like it's only Doge, right? He's trying to get this one big, beautiful bill done. He's trying to advance his policies on immigration. He's trying to, renew his tax cuts. He's trying to do a whole bunch of other things, like the child tax credit, which again was started in 2017 in those Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Josh Hawley is proposing making those permanent now. There's so much that Donald Trump wants to get done, and because of how politically caustic Doge is, the longer it sticks around and the less likely they'll be able to move on to some of these other down list items in a timely manner and maintain that momentum and that goodwill on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to quibble with anything you just said. You have this situation where we're going to get two more Republicans to slightly widen the margin, the special elections to replace Matt Gaetz, Mike Walz. You had one Democrat die. That sounds so cynical, but okay.
But it happened.
So you've expanded the margin to maybe 6.
Yeah.
And let's assume you always have a Thomas Massie who's just going to vote no on anything that gets anything done. And, Nancy Mace always needs to find a TV camera to make something on about. So realistically, what is your actual margin you're working with in the House for the TCJA? And the stakes, remember, beginning of 2026, midterm election year, if the TCJ is not reauthorized, it is a tax hike on 62% of households, an average tax increase on 22% of all Americans, and the expected automatic deductions are halved for the 90% of Americans that take the standard deduction, right? Like the default before this was that people, individual workers, middle class folks had to individually itemize every little piece of their income and their expenditures. Now, under TCJA, you have that larger tax extension. So it affects everyone in ways you don't even think, right? The top marginal tax rate for these small businesses, there are 26 million of them that take this special filing. The top marginal tax rate on those businesses would go back up to 43.4%. That's a huge tax rate. And so you're running at the clock because think of it going backwards. If you're a Democrat and Republicans haven't figured this out before Christmas and you're staring down a Christmas vote, Republicans are going to give you anything that you want in exchange for preventing that tax hike, right?
They're going to be
They're
desperate.
going to give you Green New Deal, transing the children. I don't think people will understand the panic the stock market will see with you're already seeing just over the threat of tariffs that haven't even really fully gone into effect, but kind of. You're already seeing Dow down 8% or whatnot at opening bell on Monday.
I saw NASDAQ was 7.5. Yeah, it's a bloodbath out there.
I don't think people understand all the Silicon Valley elites you've seen lining up behind Trump to get it done. This is why. Because it's the backbone of not just the American economy, but also future prospective growth in the West, because it's not coming from Europe. Europe's economy is contractionary now.
All right, up next, it's time for us to fill in that blank.
Blank will be the first to leave Trump world.
I have an answer that is going to bring us back to the econ stuff, so I want you to go first.
Mine's obvious. It's Elon Musk, right? We're 80 days or so into Trump's term in office. His special government employee contract is around 140 days. Now, of course, they can renew it, but let's not forget, Doge itself is supposed to time out next year. So it's not like Elon was ever going to be in office for the full 4 years of Trump's second term. And then again, we have all of this scuttlebutt about growing tension, not only between Musk and Donald Trump, which we've talked about at length here on this show, but between Musk and other members of the cabinet. Trump held a secret, unscheduled cabinet meeting last Thursday where basically Elon and Marco Rubio and Sean Duffy, the Department of Transportation Secretary, were yelling at each other because of all of the confusion that Doge is installing in the federal workers who remain loyal to the Trump administration. These aren't the people who were trying to upend them in the first 2 weeks of office.
These are MAGA acolytes.
Yeah, basically. Certainly all the political appointees and some of the career Republican officials who've stayed on. And look, it looks to me like Elon is wearing out his welcome. Part of that is because of the errors that Doge is making, and part of that is, again, because he is not used to working in this space. We've said it at length. You can do whatever you want when you buy a Silicon Valley tech startup that has, 40 to 50, maybe on the high end, 70 to 80 employees, right?
Move fast and break things, and at worst, you've zeroed out a non-FDIC insured investment.
Yeah, exactly. That's just not how it works, though, when you're running and trying to streamline an organization that has 2.4 million workers across the country, right? Spanning a wealth of different interests and policy areas of expertise. And I'm not even talking about the military, right? This is only civilian employees. And quite frankly, I'm kind of amazed it took this long. Yes, Elon did a good job of trying to show that the Trump administration is serious about cutting waste, and B, act as a human meat shield for Donald Trump in terms of, taking up criticism from the media during these first few early weeks. I can't even talk today because I'm so angry. It's clear to me that Musk is on the hot seat and he's probably going to be the first one out. But I want to hear what you have to say.
I don't think he can. I don't think Trump or Rubio or any of these guys can afford to have Elon flame out in a rage, right?
Okay.
Because the fact is, not only does he have the money to primary anyone he wants to primary.
That's right. Yeah.
Not only does he come and bring, I think a lot of Wall Street and Silicon Valley lining up behind Trump publicly has to do with Elon presenting that permission structure, right? But also, though, he is right now, like people forget, it is Starlink that is keeping the entire Ukrainian military operation afloat right now. For basically free.
And not just Starlink, places in rural North Carolina, Los Angeles, where we've had these natural disasters. I mean, Starlink might go down as Elon's greatest contribution to mankind. It's kind of crazy to say.
And it's like for how crazy he can seem and, wielding around the chainsaw or whatever, like maybe his strategy is not using, as Trump is taken to saying, using the scalpel. That he wants to use the scalpel. He wants to, be careful. The person who I think is going to flame out is Peter Navarro. So technically, Peter Navarro is the special counselor or senior counselor for trade and manufacturing to the president.
That's right.
But really, he is why all this with the tariffs. So just gesticulate. He's the architect of this right now.
Right.
So he has Trump's ear, and he is the one that's pushing him to actually execute the tariffs. Right. The other cabinet sects, they like the idea of the threats. All the other economic advisors, they like the idea of the threats. But Peter Navarro is a true believer, and here's why. This is the most telling line from Peter Navarro to explain why what is happening right now is happening. He wrote in an academic paper, and he's used this line a bunch, when a country runs a trade deficit by importing more than it exports, this subtracts from growth. This is a misunderstanding of a formula you learn in high school economics. GDP is CGINX, so it's consumption plus government expenditures plus investment minus net exports. And net exports is just your total exports minus your total imports. So he's saying because it's minus imports, as you can see there, it means all imports detract from GDP. But why is that? Because imports are already accounted for in the other three parts of the calculations. Let's take avocados. 90% of avocados in America are imported from Mexico. If I, a consumer, buy an avocado from Mexico, that gets counted in C. If Chipotle, where I got my lunch today, if they buy an avocado from Mexico, that counts in business. If the government buys avocados for school lunches or something, that counts as G. So that's the only reason why. And the reason why I'm explaining this in such minimal terms is because the tariffs are not happening in the way they're happening right now as the threat. Yeah. This is how I know right now I'm the clown. This is how I know I'm the clown. Because Peter Navarro has this belief that trade deficits are inherently bad. And this ignores the fact that the U.S. as the world's reserve currency, it's a good thing for us to have a trade deficit in general because it means we have more capital inflows to the country.
That was great analysis. I love it when you talk macros because, again, I don't know what I'm talking about. But seriously, from a messaging optics standpoint, to back up your point, and I think I might have just changed my vote about who's going to be leaving first, you have Peter Navarro doing these daily, if not weekly, background calls with reporters, myself included, to explain their implementation of these tariffs and negotiations with other party countries. He is adamant that these will stay in place. This is the status quo going forward, and we're going to realign the whole global economy along the way. Meanwhile, you have Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent going on Fox Business or CNBC saying, oh, I'm pretty sure the president tomorrow is going to announce that he's rolling it back, blah, 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 blah. Navarro's already on the outs. He used to be doing TV in the early days. Now he's only talking to reporters. I think the writing is on the wall for Mr. Navarro. Anyway, that's all the time we got for this week. Let us know in the comments who you think won this week's clash. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube. In the meantime, go check out more of our reporting at washingtonexaminer.com. I'm Christian Daytalk.
I'm Tiana Laudesher.
And we'll see you next time.